Hello everyone, and welcome to my studio. Today we're going to take a little trip to Venice. And we're going to do that by laying out a quick sketch, throwing on some watercolor, and I wanted to show you the process I normally take. I'm using a relatively small format today. It's probably about a 6 by 8 piece of watercolor paper. The paper is a handmade paper. So it's a little porous. So you'll see when we get into watercolor here shortly the effects that the paper has on some of the applications, the color applications. But the first thing I want to do is work with the background. Being in Venice, it's very recognizable. It's very prominent in its architectural features. So I want to just quickly pencil in the horizontality of the background and really its defined skyline, if you will. So I'm laying it in quickly with a soft pencil, not really worrying too much about detail, but I do want to make it identifiable. So I want to get the forms in. It is a background, so I won't be as detail oriented, but yet I want to ensure that when you quickly look at the final product, you'll know exactly where you are. So in working with the background, I want to get as close as I can to the real identifiable features, and certainly the Piazza San Marco tower is one of its most prominent vertical elements. I want to make sure that that's part of the background for sure. So this is what's fun. It's kind of fun to be loose. You want to keep the pencil moving, keep the lines moving, keep the lines light. It's all going to be colored over anyway. So I won't pay a lot of attention to detail, but again, I want it to serve as that backdrop to what the foreground will be, which will be one of the gondolas. I thought I'd just use one because it's a small format and it's a relatively simple watercolor. I'm just going to include one. So we'll say it's not a real busy day on the Grand Canal. This is what makes it fun. So, those gondolas always have nice lines. They're wonderfully constructed. The beautiful craftsmanship of those gondolas are part of the experience, certainly of the place. So I'm trying to just get the form down, knowing that it's going to serve as my primary entry into the sketch. I want to get a few of those lines right. I want to get the proportions right. There'll be some posts, some to add some foreground verticality, a little bit of depth to the watercolor as well. So I'm going to place those where I think they'll act as an asset instead of a detriment. And what's great is you can pencil them in and make decisions later as to exactly what happens with them, and you'll see that as we progress through this sketch. But this is what's fun for me. These early stages, you're composing your music, so to speak. You're creating your accent pieces, you're dealing with your midground, and in this case, it's essentially the canal. So you'll see how I use some of the light in the expression of that canal to help with the midground, and then the background will essentially fade into exactly what it is. It's a background. So be very aware of how it's treated, and what it begins to represent. So you don't want it to be detracting, but you want it to serve as a principal element of your composition. So as I start to apply the color, you can see this very porous paper absorbs the paint pretty quickly. It's actually a lighter blue that I'm using, but the camera makes it a little darker than usual. But you'll see it lighten up as we go through the drying process. Want to get a little bit of red into that Venetian sky, and let the background sky start blending somewhat with the little bit of horizon color. I'm painting through the pencil. I'm not really too concerned again about detail, but I do want to try to utilize the paper when and where I can to give those sparkles, let those sparkles begin to appear through the sketch. So I'm going to stop at the horizon line with this first wash. Let those colors blend a little bit. Then I'll start in with the Grand Canal color, which will also be a lighter blue, a little bit of turquoise, and then we'll let it dry. So yeah, I don't have a lot of paint on the brush because I wanted that sparkle to begin to show through. This is really important here. You want to retain the light when and where you can, and the best place to do it in this particular sketch is right on that dividing line between the sky and the water. And we'll show a little bit of brightness, a little bit of sparkle there. And again, as I work down toward the middle and lower part of the canal, I want to darken it. So I'm adding a little cerulean blue to the turquoise and sky blue color, and that gives me a little bit more depth as well. So it's kind of nice to see the progression of that first wash. We want to be very, very aware of that first wash. We want to know where our opportunities lie to keep your colors alive. And I want to be very careful. So here I'm just basically looking at what could be added and where I should stop. And it's probably a good place to stop right here. And we'll go through a little drying process for that first. Now that I have that first wash pretty well dried up, I now want to begin to work on that background skyline, and I want to, since it's a small format, I do want to ensure that that it illustrates where we are, and without bogging down in detail. You'll hear me say that multiple times, but it's important in this particular sketch to ensure that we know where it is. I don't want to overlook the importance of what this background is going to do for the entire sketch. So I know that my foreground gondola is going to be fairly dark. I could very easily wash out this background, maybe just keep it as a mid-tone, but I do want to add some of the tile color, since there's so many of those that burnt sienna, orange tile roofed areas in this in brick. Essentially, it's primarily brick. I want to add those colors and then begin to blend some of the shadow colors too. And the domes will just be that background grayish blue tone. I'll get a little bit of that refinement as we work through. May not be perfect the first time through, but as in all watercolors, you layer. And in this particular case, I'm just looking to see where I could add some of those vertical elements that begin to be the signature of the place. And this is the iconic skyline that every artist has painted at least once, and it certainly continues to attract all of us as artists to want to paint the skyline, these architectural elements, the gondolas, the people. The place is magnificent, so this is a lot of fun for me. So I'm going to just blend. It's a two-color mix. A little bit of gray and light blue, and some burnt sienna, a little bit of orange. So I won't talk a lot about color, but I do want to just accentuate some of the depth, not only as a background, but along the bottom, or I should say the water line. There's usually a lot of activity. There's docks, there's boats moored, there's people, there's shadows. I want to try to add those when and where I can. That gives the background a little bit more depth. And because we're not looking at miles and miles, as in a distant background, we're looking across this Grand Canal. So I think because of the intent of this sketch, I want to make it look like it's a place without washing all the details, but keeping some of the prominence of the architecture in mind as I look to where I can add some shadows, add some additional color, and as I begin to paint that beautiful tower, that begins to really define where you are. This is what's fun too. So I'm using a little smaller brush here because a couple of things. It's a small painting, but the background is detailed enough to where I don't want to overstate with a larger brush that might wash some of the details. So this is what's fun as well. A few little additional touches on that background. I think I'll be done with it. Wanted to make sure this prominent vertical piece fits the detail of exactly what's there. I want to hone it just a bit. And again, using that smaller brush, I want to get the proportions right. That tower is certainly a signature to Venice. And again, without the big statements of detail, I want to ensure that background works to our favor as we look through some of the little finishing pieces here. I like to touch up where there's a little shadow, show where that architecture actually meets the sky. Very important. Really enjoy that painting that skyline for sure. Yeah, it's pretty good because that's, again, I want that to be background, so we won't hopefully mess with a lot of color or detail, I should say, but we will also try to emphasize maybe some of the contrasting things that are there, some of the darks around the base. It's always a lot more activity in the base. You can give it a little touch of distance, even further distance, and then ultimately see what happens. Yes, it is background, but I always like to just add, again, some of the essence of what's there in a realistic form, if you will. So I think for those maybe that tune in and say, oh yeah, I think I know where that is, that's a good assessment of where we are in our painting. And again, this is just a sketch. But it's not that far of a distance across the Grand Canal here, so I do want to emphasize that it is background, but I think a few little highlights of some detail can begin to make this kind of cool looking. This paper really acts, it's super absorbent, but it sort of acts like a fun, it's a fun paper to use, only because it wants you to stay loose. All right, before I get into the background, I'm going to hit the dryer once again. Not a big dryer fan, but I think for this video, I want to try to get things dry as much as we can. Okay. So as mentioned, I'm not a big fan of the dryer because it sort of kills the life of what's going on. But I think in this case, I want to try to enhance the process just a bit. And again, you saw me hit the paper towel on the back. I don't want it to be crisp lines. Since this is detail, I can come back and add windows. There's a lot of contrast and things going on, but I don't want to do that. So I'm going to mix up a little bit of a heavy blue color for our foreground gondola, and kind of see where that begins to draw us. Pardon the pun. Let some of the colors blend and bleed, work itself in. Just sort of dry it up a little bit. I want to get some life back in. See how it ultimately plays out. And this is actually white. This is a white tip on these, but I may come back a little bit and adjust. For right now, I'll just make it a lighter color. What I do want to do as well, right at the bottom, I want to get a little bit of that reflection going. There's going to be some neat stuff happening there. I want it to bleed and work its way in. So I want that to remain relatively wet right now. Got a couple little things I want to do on this boat. Get a little bit of this side. Oops, my brush gets a little ragged. We're going to drag it down and get a little bit of a little 3-dimension to this guy. Right. Yep. Beautiful lines on these gondolas always. So you want a little bit of a bleed going on. I'll come back and add a little dark when it needs to happen, but it's going to be all about this reflection here, which will actually kind of take a shape like this. So as we look at finalizing our sketch here, this little trip to Venice brings us into the detail phase, if you will. It's always fun to look at how you can be a little bit more expressive with your details, yet not too complex, if you will. So I'm looking to see where should those posts that are very prevalent along the Grand Canal, where should they be located? Yeah, that's a good spot here. Wanted to make sure we get a little bit of angularity there. It begins to lead you into the picture and certainly give it its own identity with reflections. Give a little bit more, I guess, depth to the base and work some of those details into the reflection as well. Now I want to make sure that gondola has that 3-dimensional quality, so I'm adding a little bit of depth to its backside, if you will, and that gives us the opportunity to give that rounded sense, if you will, that little dimensional. And yes, it's time to add the finishing touches. You know, it's been a fun journey to this in this point in any sketch or any painting. The journey to the detail is exciting, and that journey is, don't start with the details early. You'll get bogged down. You'll lose that freshness. You'll lose that expressive quality if you focus too early on the details. So what I'm trying to do here is get a few details in that in the water, get them in the posts that we ultimately tie up these gondolas with, and again add a little bit of intense interest in the foreground, and that's what we're trying to do. So I'm going to add one more location of those that post, and we'll get on with finishing this one up. It's been a lot of fun. As we used to say in the Old West, my hitching post done. That's going to be right here. It's going to start here. It's actually going to be down this side of the boat and into the water there. That's where I want it. And I'll work with that contrast against the boat here a little later, but that's kind of where I wanted it. Then we'll give it its own identifying reflection as well. Yeah. Okay. Kind of fun. Again, it's just a quick sketch, guys. It's just the beauty of what we do as artists. Obviously, it's innate to who we are, you know, to want to paint. We want to show what we can do, sometimes in an overly detailed way, where we don't necessarily have to hit all the details. But just even in a few minutes, it's fun to see what we can accomplish in just a very, very quick way. I'll come back and hit those highlights, but I'm going to hit a couple of highlights on this boat. Then I'll get my little finger in the wet paint. You know, I got to do that. That's all part of the process. All part of the process. A little bit of light reflection on the side. Something like that as well. Kind of helps. And for you purists out there, a lot of times, oh no, I don't want to use white. I use a little bit of gouache, and that always works out nicely. At times, I'll put a little bit of white here as well. There we go. That's what I wanted. I think that's enough there. Just a little bit of peak. Just to show there is some reflection on that post just from the sun angle. And give it a sense of, you know, more striping on the gondola without overly detailing. Doing a little bit of the impression that something's happening other than the light reflections. And I'm going to use a little more dark red in here too. Kind of let that go down into the water, a little shadow side. Then that connection right here to the water is going to be a little stronger, and I think we're going to be just about done. A few little nicks and tucks and a couple little spots and scribbles. And you know, we should be just about done. kind of accentuate these lines. This beautifully handcrafted gondola. It's actually just really, they're gorgeous works of art in their own right. Got about 20 bucks worth of paint on the end of that brush. Get a little flicks, and you know, we're just about done. I'm gonna get up underneath here. There's some darks. I want to emphasize that underneath this little back stern seat or whatever, there's some darks back there. And I think there you have it. Soften this a little bit. Let that run. I think we'll call it a sketch. You know, there's always things you can touch and go on and so forth, but I really like to just hit the highlights, see where it ultimately ends up, and let watercolor do its thing. Love that. Just quick, again, just talking about our foreground, just talking about our middle ground and background. Look for where you can preserve some of the lights. Look where some of the darks can accentuate your forms, and try to create an interesting composition. What I like is that the reflections bring you in, the background sort of finishes off the sketch. So there you have it. So thanks for tuning in. This has been fun for me. There's going to be a lot more where this comes from for sure, and I look forward to our next time. So thanks everyone. Take care.